The dust hung in the afternoon air like something alive kicked up by tires that had already begun their retreat down the gravel road. Evangeline Morrison stood at the wooden gate, 12 years old, and holding her ground while the engine noise faded into the Tennessee hills. Behind her, an old farmhouse sat quiet, under the weight of a September sky that couldn't decide between storm and sunshine. The woman standing at the gate beside her was 72, white-haired, wearing an apron dusted with flour from the morning's baking. Margaret Ashford. Everyone in the county had once known that name back when her hands stitched wedding dresses and Sunday suits for half the families in 3 townships. But that was before the drowning, before the silence that stretched 15 years and counting. Now those same hands rested on the weathered fence post, steady and sure as a younger woman leaned out the car window 50 yards down the road. Claudette Morrison, Eva's aunt. The only family the girl had left in this world, at least on paper. "This isn't over," Claudette shouted, her voice carrying on the wind. "She's my niece, my blood." Maggie didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. The words came out level and certain the way a judge delivers a verdict. "The child stays." Eva felt her throat tighten. Her fingers gripped the wooden fence so hard she could feel splinters threatening the skin. Behind them, chickens scratched in the yard. A cow lowed somewhere in the small barn. The world kept turning ordinary and impossible all at once. Claudette's face twisted with something between rage and desperation. For a moment, Eva thought she might throw the car into reverse, come barreling back to settle this once and for all. But the moment passed. The brake lights flared once, then released, and the car rolled forward, around the bend, out of sight. The silence that followed felt heavier than the September heat. Maggie turned to look at Eva. Really look at her. Those pale blue eyes that had seen 72 years of Tennessee seasons of loss and grief, and the kind of loneliness that carves canyons in a person's heart. "Child," she said quietly, "do you want to go with her?" Eva's answer caught in her throat, not because she didn't know it, but because no one had asked her that question before. Not once in the 12 years she'd been breathing. Decisions had always been made for her about her around her, never with her. She shook her head. Once. Definite. "No, ma'am," she whispered. "I don't." Maggie nodded slowly as if confirming something she already knew. Then she did something Eva hadn't expected. She reached out and placed one weathered hand on the girl's shoulder. The touch was light, careful, like she was afraid the child might shatter. "Then you'll stay," Maggie said simply. "Long as you need to." The words hung in the air between them, solemn as a vow. But this moment, this decision hadn't appeared from nowhere. Every ending has a beginning, and this story's beginning lay 48 hours in the past, on a road Eva had walked alone, carrying nothing but an old hoe and a hollow stomach. The sky had been different then. 48 hours earlier, dawn broke gray and reluctant over the mobile home where Eva had lived for the past year. Technically, it belonged to Claudette Morrison, her father's younger sister. A woman who'd taken her in when the accident happened when Eva's parents drove off a rain-slicked bridge one April night and never came home. That morning, Eva woke to the sound of arguing. Not unusual. Claudette had a talent for finding things to fight about, especially when she'd been drinking. But this time the anger had a sharper edge. Desperation, maybe. Fear dressed up as rage. Eva pulled on her clothes, a faded t-shirt, jeans with patches on both knees. She braided her dark brown hair by touch. No mirror needed. When she emerged from the tiny bedroom that barely fit a twin mattress, Claudette was pacing the narrow kitchen, like something caged. There you are. Her aunt's eyes were bloodshot, ringed with yesterday's makeup. Sit down. We need to talk. Eva sat at the wobbly kitchen table. A stack of papers lay there, official-looking documents with dense text and signature lines. Her stomach tightened. Nothing good ever came from papers like these. Claudette lit a cigarette, hands shaking slightly. Your parents had a house, the one they were living in when they died. Eva knew this. A small place on the edge of town. 3 bedrooms, a porch that needed fixing a yard. Her father had always meant to landscape, but never got around to. It sat empty now, waiting for what Eva didn't know. The house is in your name, Claudette continued, but you're 12. You can't own property. I'm your legal guardian, so I can make decisions about it. She pushed the papers across the table. I need you to sign these. Eva looked down at the documents. Sale agreement. The words swam before her eyes, but she caught enough. Her parents' house being sold. Why? The word came out smaller than she intended. Because I need the money. Claudette's jaw set in that way that meant the conversation was supposed to be over. I've got debts to pay. You've got a roof over your head, don't you? Food to eat. This is what family does. We help each other. Eva's fingers traced the edge of the paper. Something in her chest felt like it was cracking open. That house wasn't just wood and nails. It was her mother's laugh echoing in the kitchen. Her father's workbench in the garage still covered with sawdust from projects he'd never finish. It was the last physical piece of them left in the world. She heard her mother's voice then, a memory so clear it might have been yesterday. They'd been sitting on that porch watching fireflies dance in the summer dusk. Eva had asked if they'd ever move away, get something bigger. Her mother had smiled, squeezed her hand. Never give up what your father built, sweetheart. Not for anything, not for anyone. What we build with our own hands, that's what lasts. Eva looked up at her aunt. No. Claudette blinked. What? No. Louder this time. I won't sign it. The slap came fast. Eva's head snapped sideways, cheek burning. She pressed her hand to her face, eyes stinging with tears she refused to let fall. You ungrateful little brat. Claudette's voice had gone cold. Dangerous. I took you in when I didn't have to. Fed you. Clothed you. And this is how you repay me. Mama said, your mama's dead. The words were meant to wound, and they did. and dead people don't get a say in how the living survive. You think I wanted this a kid to raise another mouth to feed? Eva said nothing, just stared at the table at those papers that might as well have been a funeral. Claudette grabbed the documents, crumpled them in her fist. Fine. You want to be stubborn. You can do it somewhere else. What? Pack your things. You've got 10 minutes. Ava's heart stopped. You can't. I can. I'm done, Eva. You're dead weight. Nothing but a burden I never asked for. Claudette pointed toward the bedroom. 10 minutes. Then I want you gone. The next few minutes blurred. Eva moved through them like someone underwater, sounds muffled, vision tunneled. She stuffed clothes into an old backpack. A photograph of her parents, the only one she owned. A pocket knife her father had given her. Nothing else fit. Nothing else mattered. When she emerged, Claudette was standing by the door. Arms crossed, face hard as granite. Where am I supposed to go? Eva asked, hating how small her voice sounded. Not my problem anymore. Claudette opened the door. Sunlight spilled across the threshold, bright and merciless. Get out. Eva stepped outside. The door slammed behind her with the finality of a coffin lid. She stood there on the cracked concrete steps, backpack on one shoulder, trying to understand how the world had just ended in less than 15 minutes. Then she remembered the tool shed. Her father's old hoe, the one with the worn wooden handle, smoothed by years of use. Claudette had stored it there along with the other things she'd cleared from the house. Eva walked around the side of the mobile home, retrieved the hoe. The weight of it felt like holding her father's hand one more time. She looked back once. The door stayed closed. No face appeared in the window. No voice called her back saying it had all been a mistake, a moment of anger. Nothing. So Eva Morrison, 12 years old, started walking. The road stretched ahead like something with no end. Gravel crunched beneath her worn sneakers. The morning sun climbed higher, turning the September air thick and heavy. Eva walked without destination, without plan. She only knew she had to move forward because standing still meant thinking and thinking meant breaking. After an hour, thirst began to claw at her throat. Her stomach, which had gone without breakfast, started to ache. She passed a mailbox with a name she didn't recognize and a long driveway leading to a brick house set back from the road. A woman was watering flowers in the front yard. Eva approached slowly, the hoe balanced on her shoulder. "Excuse me, ma'am." The woman looked up, middle-aged, wearing gardening gloves and a sun hat. Her eyes traveled from Eva's face to the backpack, to the hoe, putting together a story that made her mouth tighten. "I was wondering if I could get some water," Eva asked. "I've been walking a while." The woman set down her watering can. "Where are your parents, honey?" "They passed away last year." A flicker of sympathy crossed the woman's face, but it didn't last. "And who are you staying with?" Eva hesitated. "Nobody. Right now." The sympathy vanished, replaced by something warier. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, but I can't help you. You need to go to the sheriff's office." They'll find you someplace proper to stay. I just need water. I can't." The woman picked up her watering can again, a clear dismissal. "I'm sorry. I've got my own family to think about." Eva stood there a moment longer, then turned away. The rejection shouldn't have stung. She barely knew this woman. But it stung anyway. 2 more houses. Same story. One man didn't even come to the door, just shouted through the screen that he didn't want any trouble. Another woman offered to call social services, which sent Eva hurrying back to the road before the call could be made. By afternoon, the hunger had grown teeth. The thirst made her head swim. Eva sat down on the roadside in the shade of an old oak tree and let herself rest. The hoe lay in the grass beside her. She pulled out the photograph of her parents, studied their smiling faces, her father's arm around her mother's shoulders, her mother's hand resting on Eva's head. They'd been at some church picnic, she remembered. Before the accident. Before everything. "I don't know what to do," she whispered to the photograph, as if they might answer. As if the dead could reach back through that terrible divide and offer guidance. But they stayed silent, frozen in that moment of captured happiness. Eva tucked the photo away, stood up. The world tilted slightly from dehydration, but she steadied herself against the tree trunk. Staying here wouldn't solve anything. She had to keep moving. That's when she saw it. Through a gap in the trees, maybe a quarter-mile ahead, a small farm. Nothing fancy. A weathered house with a tin roof. A wooden fence enclosing a modest yard. A few chickens pecking in the dust. Smoke rising from a chimney despite the September warmth. Where there was smoke, there were people. Where there were people, there might be help. Eva picked up the hoe, shouldered her backpack, and started walking toward what she didn't know would be the last gate she'd ever have to beg at. The farm looked like something from another era. Not deliberately preserved, but simply persisting. The fence was old wood, sun-bleached and solid. The house was small, built of clapboard painted white once upon a time, now faded to gray. 2 massive oak trees stood sentinel in the front yard, their branches spreading shade across a dirt path worn smooth by decades of footsteps. Eva approached slowly. A wooden gate marked the entrance to the property, hanging slightly crooked on its hinges. Beyond it, the yard was clean but sparse. Chickens scratched near a small coop. A cow stood in a modest corral to one side, chewing cud, with the patient disinterest of livestock everywhere. And there, near the porch, an old woman scattered feed from a metal bucket. She was small, white-haired, wearing a simple dress and an apron. Her movements were economical, practiced. She'd clearly done this same task 1,000 times before. 10,000. Every morning for years beyond counting. Eva stopped at the gate. Her throat was so dry, she wasn't sure she could speak. Her hands gripped the hoe handle knuckles white. This was it. The last chance. If this door closed too, she didn't know what would come next. The old woman looked up. Their eyes met across the yard. For a long moment, neither moved. The woman's face was weathered, lined deep by time and sun and something else. Grief maybe. The kind that settles into a person's bones and never quite leaves. But her eyes were clear, sharp, taking in every detail of the girl at her gate. Eva forced her voice to work. "Ma'am." The word came out as barely more than a croak. The old woman set down her bucket, didn't speak, just waited. Eva swallowed hard. Her next words would decide everything. She thought of her father, of the hoe he'd used to turn the soil in their backyard garden, of her mother's voice, of what it meant to work for what you needed rather than beg for what you wanted. "Ma'am," she said again, clearer this time, "could I hoe your yard in exchange for a piece of bread?" The sentence hung in the air between them, simple, direct. A bargain offered by someone with nothing to bargain with except effort. The old woman stood very still. Her gaze moved from Eva's face to the hoe on her shoulder, to the backpack, to the dust on her clothes, and the exhaustion in her eyes. She was reading a story there written in dirt and desperation. When she finally spoke, her voice was southern soft, but carried an unexpected strength. "You know how to hoe." "Yes, ma'am. My daddy taught me." "And where's your daddy now?" "He passed. Year ago. Him and Mama both." The old woman nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something. "What's your name, child?" "Evangeline Morrison." "Eva." "Eva." The woman tested the name. "I'm Margaret Ashford. Most folks call me Maggie." She paused, eyes never leaving Eva's face. "And are you hungry, Eva?" The question was so direct, so plainly kind, that Eva felt her careful composure crack. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Maggie picked up her feed bucket, walked toward the gate. Up close, Eva could see she was older than she'd first appeared. 70 at least, maybe more. But she moved with purpose, without the hesitation of someone frail. She opened the gate with one hand. "Come in, then." Eva hesitated. "I can work first. I don't need." "Nobody works on an empty stomach on my land." Maggie's tone left no room for argument. "Come on." Eva stepped through the gate. The chickens scattered briefly at her approach, then returned to their scratching. The cow in the corral lifted its head, regarded her with mild bovine curiosity, then went back to its cud. The farmyard smelled like earth and hay and wood smoke. Clean smells. Honest smells. Eva followed Maggie up the porch steps, across weathered boards that creaked under their weight. The inside of the house was dim and cool after the brightness of the yard. A small front room with a wood stove, a kitchen table scarred but scrubbed clean, a doorway leading to what looked like a bedroom. Everything spare and tidy, the home of someone who'd learned to live with only what was necessary. Maggie gestured to a chair at the table. "Sit." Eva sat still, clutching her backpack. The hoe she leaned carefully against the wall by the door. Maggie moved to the stove where a pot simmered. The smell of beans and ham made Eva's stomach clench with hunger so sharp it was almost painful. The old woman ladled food onto a plate, added a thick slice of cornbread. set it in front of Eva along with a glass of water. Eat. Eva stared at the plate. When had she last eaten? Yesterday afternoon, maybe. Some crackers Claudette had thrown at her. Before that, she couldn't remember. She picked up the fork, started eating. Slowly at first, trying to maintain some dignity. But hunger won out. Within minutes, she was eating fast, shoveling food into her mouth like someone afraid it might vanish. Maggie watched from the stove. She'd seen this before clearly. People who ate like they were racing time. People who'd gone too long with nothing. When Ava's plate was empty, Maggie refilled it without a word. The girl ate that too, more slowly now. When she finally stopped, her stomach felt strange, full, almost uncomfortably so. But the shakiness in her hands had steadied. Maggie poured herself a cup of coffee, sat down across from Eva. "Where'd you come from?" Eva told her. Not everything. Not the slap or the cruelty of Claudette's final words, but enough. The mobile home. The argument about the house. Being told to leave. Maggie listened without interrupting. When Eva finished, the old woman was quiet for a long moment, studying her coffee cup, like it held answers. "You got anywhere else to go?" Maggie asked finally. "No, ma'am." Another long silence. Outside, a rooster crowed, the sound of afternoon settling into early evening. "You can stay here tonight," Maggie said. "Road's no place for a child after dark." Eva's head snapped up. "Really? Really?" Maggie stood, carried her cup to the sink. "There's a small room in back. Used to be." She paused. "It's empty now. You can sleep there." "Thank you." Eva's voice cracked. "Thank you so much." Maggie turned from the sink. For the first time, something in her expression softened. Just a fraction. Just enough to show that beneath the weathered exterior lived someone who understood what it meant to be lost. "One night," she said gently. "Then we'll figure out what comes next." But there was something in her eyes when she looked at Eva. A recognition. A ghost of something old and painful stirring to life. She didn't say it then. Couldn't say it. But later, when Eva was settled in the small back room, Maggie walked to a drawer in her bedroom, pulled out an old photograph album, turned to a page she'd avoided for 15 years. The girl in the photograph was 12 years old. Dark brown hair, brown eyes, a smile that could light up a room. Annabelle. Her granddaughter. The child she'd raised from birth after her own daughter died, bringing the baby into the world. Annabelle, who drowned in the creek behind the property 15 years ago, while Maggie had been inside hanging laundry. By the time she'd heard the splash, it was already too late. Maggie stared at the photograph, then glanced toward the back room where Eva slept. The resemblance wasn't exact, but it was close enough to make her chest ache with a pain she'd thought had finally scarred over. She closed the album, put it away. But sleep didn't come easy that night. In the back room, Eva lay on a real bed. For the first time in what felt like forever. Clean sheets, a thin quilt, a window that looked out over the darkening farmyard. Her backpack sat on the floor beside her. The hoe leaned in the corner. She should have felt relief, safety, but instead, she felt the weight of impermanence. One night, Maggie had said, "Then what? Back to the road, to social services, to some foster home where she'd be one more unwanted child in a system already drowning." Eva pulled out her parents' photograph one more time, studied their faces in the fading light. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. Same words as before. Still no answer. She tucked the photo under her pillow, closed her eyes. Exhaustion pulled her down into sleep despite the uncertainty. And in the morning, everything would change. Dawn came gentle to the farmyard. Roosters crow first, then birdsong, then the slow lightening of the sky from black to deep blue to gray-pink. Eva woke to unfamiliar sounds, not traffic, not Claudette's television blaring through thin walls, just chickens and wind and the distant lowing of the cow. She dressed quickly, braided her hair. When she emerged from the back room, Maggie was already up, dressed in the same simple style as yesterday. The wood stove crackled with fresh fire. Coffee perked in an old metal pot. "Morning," Maggie said without turning from the stove. "Morning, ma'am." Maggie poured coffee into a chip mug, set it on the table along with a plate of biscuits and butter. "You sleep all right?" "Yes, ma'am. Best I've slept in a while." Maggie nodded. She poured her own coffee, sat down. They ate in comfortable silence. Outside, the farm woke up with them. The rhythm of it all felt ancient, reliable. When the meal was finished, Eva stood to help with dishes. Maggie didn't stop her. They worked side by side at the sink, the old woman washing the girl, drying and stacking. "You said you know how to hoe," Maggie said finally. "Yes, ma'am. There's a patch out back that's gotten wild. Weeds have taken over. I haven't had the strength to clear it myself." She glanced at Eva. "Still interested in that bargain you proposed?" Eva felt something lift in her chest. Work. Purpose. A reason to stay, even if just for a little longer. "Yes, ma'am. I'd like that." "All right, then." Maggie dried her hands on her apron. "I'll show you." The patch was behind the house, maybe 30 feet square. Tall weeds choked what had once been a vegetable garden. Eva could see the remnants of old stakes and string where rows had been marked out. Maggie handed her the hoe. "Start on that side. Work your way across. I'll be in the house if you need anything." Eva gripped the worn handle. Her father's hands had held wood like this, smoothed by years of use until it fit the palm perfectly. She started at the edge of the patch. The first swing of the hoe bit into the earth, cut through weeds. The second swing. The third. A rhythm established itself. Lift, swing, pull. Lift, swing, pull. The sun climbed higher. Sweat beaded on Eva's forehead, soaked through her shirt. Her shoulders began to ache. But she didn't stop. This was more than clearing weeds. This was proving something. To Maggie, yes. But mostly to herself. I'm not dead weight. I'm not a burden. I can be useful. I can earn my place. Every swing of the hoe drove that thought deeper. Hours passed. The patch slowly transformed. Weeds gave way to dark soil. The old garden rows began to reveal themselves. Eva worked steadily, methodically, the way her father had taught her. Don't rush. Do it right the first time. Around midday, Maggie appeared with a glass of water. Eva stopped leaning on the hoe, breathing hard. The old woman studied the cleared ground. You work well, she said simply. Eva drank the water in long gulps. My daddy taught me. Said any job worth doing was worth doing right. Smart man, your daddy. Yes, ma'am, he was. Maggie nodded toward the house. Come get some lunch. Ground'll still be there after. They ate sandwiches at the kitchen table. Ham and cheese on bread Maggie had baked herself. Eva's muscles ached pleasantly, the good kind of tired that comes from honest work. What happened to your granddaughter? The question escaped before Eva could stop it. She'd seen the photograph on the mantel that morning while Maggie was outside. A young girl, smiling. The frame dusty, like it hadn't been moved in years. Maggie's expression closed. For a moment, Eva thought she'd crossed some terrible line. But then the old woman sighed, set down her sandwich. Her name was Annabelle. The words came slowly, like they hurt to say. My daughter died giving birth to her. So I raised her. Just the two of us after my husband passed. Eva waited. Sensed there was more. She drowned 15 years ago this past July in the creek out back. Maggie's voice had gone flat, factual, the way people talk when emotion would be too much to bear. I was hanging laundry, didn't hear her go down there. By the time I found her, she stopped, took a breath. Gone. I'm sorry, Eva said quietly. People said it wasn't my fault, that children sometimes get into trouble faster than anyone can prevent. But I was her guardian, her protector. I should have. Maggie shook her head. After that, I couldn't face folks anymore. The pity, the whispers. So I stopped going to town, stopped going to church. Just me and the farm. 15 years of just me and the farm. Eva looked down at her hands. Is that why you let me stay? Because I reminded you of her? Maggie met her eyes. Maybe at first. When I saw you at that gate for just a second, I thought. She paused. But no, you're not Annabelle. You're Eva. And I let you stay because a child showed up at my door hungry and alone, and turning away someone in need isn't something I could live with. Already got enough regrets. The honesty in those words settled something in Eva. She wasn't a replacement, just a girl who needed help, and a woman willing to give it. They finished lunch in silence. Eva returned to the garden patch. By late afternoon, the entire area was cleared. Soil turned. Ready for planting when the season came around again. Maggie inspected the work, nodded approval. You've earned more than a piece of bread, child. You've earned your supper and a bed for as long as you need it." Eva's heart leaped. Really? Really? Maggie's expression softened. "Can't promise it's permanent. Can't promise I know what I'm doing. But you can stay." That night, after another meal and another evening settling into the rhythm of farm life, Eva lay in the back room and felt something she hadn't felt since the accident, something close to hope. 3 weeks passed. Eva fell into the pattern of the farm like she'd been born to it. Wake with the rooster, help Maggie with breakfast, tend the chickens, repair fences, learn to milk the cow whose name was Bessie and who had definite opinions about strangers touching her udders. Maggie proved to be a patient teacher. She showed Eva how to mend clothes, how to bake bread, how to read the sky for coming weather. At night, they sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the Tennessee hills, not talking much, but comfortable in the silence. Eva noticed things about Maggie, the way she moved slowly in the mornings like her joints needed time to remember their purpose, the way she rubbed her chest sometimes absently like something ached there, the photograph albums she kept in her bedroom but never looked at. And Eva noticed something else, the absence of people. In 3 weeks, not one visitor, not one car pulling up the drive, just the mailman twice a week leaving bills and catalogs that Maggie barely glanced at. On the 22nd day that changed, Eva was in the yard hammering a loose board back onto the chicken coop when she heard an engine. She looked up to see an old pickup truck turning into the drive. The truck was dusty but well-maintained, and it moved slowly, carefully, like the driver was in no particular hurry. Maggie emerged from the house, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun. Eva couldn't read her expression. Not quite pleased, not quite worried, something in between. The truck stopped. A man climbed out. He was maybe 68, 70, tall and lean, wearing jeans and a plaid shirt. His hair was white, his face weathered but kind. He moved with the careful deliberateness of someone whose joints had started making editorial comments about sudden movements. "Maggie," he said, removing his baseball cap. "Been a while." "Hosea." Maggie's voice was neutral. "It has." Reverend Hosea Brooks. Eva knew the name from the sign she'd seen on the little white church they passed on the rare occasions Maggie drove to town for supplies. First Baptist. Services Sunday mornings and Wednesday evenings. The Reverend's eyes found Eva. Surprise flickered across his face. "And who might this be?" "This is Eva Morrison," Maggie said. "She's staying with me." "Is that right?" Hosea's expression shifted to something warmer. "Well, hello, Eva. Pleasure to meet you." "Hello, sir," Eva said quietly. Hosea looked between them, questions clearly gathering behind his eyes. Maggie, who hadn't let another soul onto her property in 15 years, suddenly had a child living with her. "Might we talk?" Hosea asked Maggie. "Just for a few minutes." Maggie hesitated, then nodded. "Eva, why don't you finish with that coop? The Reverend and I will be on the porch." Eva returned to her hammering, but she couldn't help listening. sound carried in the quiet afternoon. "Who is she really?" Hosea asked gently. "Just what I said. A girl who needed help. Maggie, you haven't taken in so much as a stray cat in 15 years. Now there's a child living here. You object." "No, Lord, no." Hosea's voice carried genuine feeling. "I think it's wonderful. I just want to make sure everything's proper, legal. She's got an aunt, legal guardian, but the aunt wasn't fit. Threw the child out." Maggie's tone hardened. "I gave her a place to stay. That's all. And the aunt, she know where Eva is." A pause. "Not yet, but she'll figure it out eventually. Small county." "Maggie," Hosea sighed. "You know I support you. Always have. But you need to be careful. If there's any question of impropriety of taking someone else's ward without permission." "The child was starving on the road, Hosea." Maggie's voice cut sharp. "What was I supposed to do? Turn her away? Let her wander until she collapsed?" "Of course not. But nobody came looking for her. Not in 3 weeks. That tell you something about how much that aunt cares." Silence. Then Hosea spoke more gently. "It tells me the child's better off here. But it also tells me trouble's probably coming. When it does, you'll need help. Friends. The church community. Haven't needed the church community in 15 years. No. You've just been punishing yourself for 15 years. Hosea's words were gentle but firm. "Annabelle's death wasn't your fault, Maggie. How many times do folks need to tell you that before you believe it? As many times as it takes to bring her back." Maggie's voice had gone quiet, wounded. Another long silence. Eva focused hard on her hammer, on the nail, on anything except the ache in the old woman's words. "This child," Hosea said finally, "she reminds you of Annabelle. Some, same age, similar look." A pause. "But she's not a replacement if that's what you're thinking. She's her own person. Just someone who needed help when nobody else would give it. Then I'm glad she found you, and I'm glad you let her stay." Hosea's voice warmed. "Maybe this is God's way of giving you both what you need. Don't go turning this into a sermon, Hosea. Wouldn't dream of it." But there was a smile in his words. They talked a while longer. Easier topics. The weather, the corn crop, general news from town. When Hosea finally left, he tipped his hat to Eva. "You take care of Miss Maggie, you hear?" "Yes, sir," Eva said. "I will." After his truck disappeared down the road, Maggie stood on the porch, arms crossed, staring after it. Eva joined her. "Is he right about trouble coming?" Maggie looked down at her. Something passed between them. An understanding. "Probably," the old woman said. "Your aunt's going to realize eventually where you are. And when she does, she'll come for you. Legal guardian and all. What happens then? Then we deal with it." Maggie's jaw set. Together. That night, Eva couldn't sleep. She lay in bed thinking about Claudette, about the house and the papers and the money her aunt needed, about what would happen when she was found. Through the wall, she could hear Maggie moving around. Restless, too, it seemed. Tomorrow, Eva decided. Tomorrow she'd ask Maggie about something permanent, about legal arrangements, about adoption or guardianship or whatever it took to stay. Because this farm, this woman, this quiet life of chickens and coffee and honest work, it had become home. The first real home she'd had since the accident, and she'd fight to keep it. But the next day, before she could say anything, a car appeared on the road. Not Hosea's truck, not the mailman. A sedan dusty from highway miles, moving fast. Eva recognized it instantly. Her stomach turned to ice. Claudette had found her. The car skidded to a stop outside the gate. The door flew open. Claudette stepped out dressed in wrinkled clothes that looked like she'd slept in them. Her face was haggard, desperate. Maggie was already walking toward the gate. Eva followed her legs moving on their own despite the fear tightening her chest. "So this is where you've been hiding," Claudette called out. Not quite shouting, but close. 3 weeks, Eva. 3 weeks without a word. Eva said nothing, just stood behind Maggie. Claudette's eyes shifted to the old woman. "And who the hell are you?" "Margaret Ashford. This is my property." "Then you're harboring a minor without permission." Claudette's voice took on a threatening edge. "That's a crime, lady. I could have you arrested." "The child came to me hungry and alone," Maggie replied calmly. "I gave her food and shelter. If that's a crime, then lock me up. She's my niece, my responsibility, and she's coming home with me right now." Claudette pointed at Eva. "Get in the car." Eva didn't move. Her hands balled into fists at her sides. Claudette took a step toward the gate. "I said get in the car." "No." Eva's voice came out stronger than she expected. "I'm not going back. You don't have a choice." "Yes, she does." Maggie moved slightly, positioning herself between Claudette and the gate, between the woman and the girl. "And before you take another step, you should know Sheriff Coleman is already aware of the situation." It was a bluff. Maggie hadn't called anyone, but Claudette didn't know that. The mention of the sheriff made Claudette hesitate. "This isn't over. I'm her legal guardian. You can't keep her." "I'm not keeping her." Maggie's voice remained level. "She's choosing to stay." Claudette's laugh was sharp, bitter. "She's 12 years old. She doesn't get to choose." And that's when Maggie asked the question that would change everything. She turned slightly, looked at Eva, those pale blue eyes steady and sure. "Child," she said quietly, "do you want to go with her?" Time seemed to stop. The world held its breath. Chickens froze mid-scratch. Wind paused in the trees. Everything waited for Eva's answer. The girl looked at her aunt. At the woman who'd taken her in after the accident, yes, but who'd also used her, tried to force her to give up the last piece of her parents. who'd thrown her out like garbage when she refused. Then she looked at Maggie, at the woman who'd fed her without question, who'd given her work and dignity, who'd taught her skills and offered her safety, who'd really asked her what she wanted. Eva's answer was quiet, but it was certain. No, ma'am. I don't want to go with her. The dust from Claudette's tires hung in the air long after the car disappeared around the bend. Eva stood at the gate, her heart hammering against her ribs, trying to process what had just happened. She'd said no, out loud, to an adult, to family. And the world hadn't ended. Maggie's hand rested on her shoulder, light, steady, grounding. "Come on inside," the old woman said quietly. "I'll make us some tea." They walked back to the house in silence. The chickens had resumed their scratching. Bessie the cow chewed her cud without concern for human drama. The farm absorbed the tension and gentled it the way farms do. Life continued. Work remained. The sun would set and rise regardless of what complications people brought to its door. In the kitchen, Maggie filled the kettle, set it on the stove. Eva sat at the table, her hands still trembling slightly. She pressed them flat against the worn wood, trying to steady them. "She'll come back," Eva said. Not a question. Probably. Maggie measured tea leaves into a pot. With lawyers, maybe. Or the sheriff, saying I'm keeping you here against your will. You're not. I know that. You know that. But the law's a complicated thing when it comes to children and guardians. The kettle began to whistle. Maggie poured hot water over the tea leaves. "We'll need to be prepared." Eva watched steam rise from the pot. "What if they make me go back?" Maggie brought 2 cups to the table, sat down across from Eva. For a long moment she didn't answer, just studied the girl's face with those pale blue eyes that seemed to see straight through to the bone. "Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it," she said finally. "But I won't hand you over without a fight. That much I promise." The tea was hot and sweet. Eva wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the warmth seep into her palms. Outside, afternoon was settling toward evening. The light through the kitchen window turned golden. "Miss Maggie," Eva spoke carefully, testing the waters. "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask me anything, child." "Why don't you go to church anymore?" The question landed in the space between them like a stone in still water. Maggie's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Old pain. Old shame. "You've been talking to Hosea," she said. "No, ma'am, I just noticed. Reverend Brooks comes by and you're polite. But you don't go to town much. Don't see people. It's like..." Eva searched for the right words. "It's like you're hiding." Maggie set down her cup. Her fingers traced the rim absently. "After Annabelle died, I couldn't face folks. All that pity. All those people telling me it wasn't my fault when I knew better. When I knew if I'd just been paying attention, if I'd just kept her closer." She stopped, took a breath. "So I stopped going, stopped seeing people, easier that way. For 15 years. For 15 years. Maggie's voice was flat, factual. Eva leaned forward. But you saved me. You took me in when nobody else would. You gave me a home. She paused, choosing her next words with care. You saved me, Miss Maggie. Now let me help you come back to life. The old woman looked up sharply. What? You're not living. You're just existing. Like you're punishing yourself for something that was an accident. Eva's voice gained strength. You told me Annabelle drowned. That's terrible. That's the worst thing I can imagine. But you didn't kill her. You didn't push her in that creek. It was just awful luck. Bad timing. The kind of thing that happens and breaks people's hearts, but isn't anybody's fault. Maggie's eyes had gone bright, wet. She blinked hard. You don't understand. I understand that my mama and daddy drove off a bridge in the rain. They died and left me behind. And for a long time I was so angry at them. For dying. For leaving me with Aunt Claudette. For not being more careful. Eva's voice cracked, but she pushed on. But they didn't choose to die. They didn't choose to leave me. It just happened. And being angry at them or at God or at the rain, it doesn't change anything. It just makes the hurt last longer. Silence filled the kitchen. Outside, a mourning dove called. Somewhere distant, a dog barked. When did you get so wise? Maggie asked, her voice rough. I'm not wise. I'm just tired of losing people. Eva reached across the table, put her hand over Maggie's weathered one. You're the first person since Mama and Daddy who's treated me like I matter. Like I'm not just a burden or a problem to solve. Please don't make me lose you too by watching you hide away from the world. Maggie turned her hand over, squeezed Eva's fingers. I wouldn't know where to start. Start with church, this Sunday. We'll go together. The old woman's face showed fear, real, visible fear. Eva, I haven't been in 15 years. People will stare. They'll whisper. Let them. We'll sit in the back. And if it's too much, we'll leave. But at least try. For me, Eva squeezed back. Please. Maggie looked at their joined hands. At the girl who'd appeared at her gate 3 weeks ago, desperate and alone. The girl who'd somehow become the strongest person in this kitchen. All right, she whispered. All right, we'll try. The days that followed took on a different quality. Eva noticed small changes. Maggie hummed while cooking. She pulled out an old dress from the back of her closet, one she must have worn before when she still went places. She spent an evening mending it, her needle moving with practiced precision through fabric that had waited years to be worn again. Eva also noticed something else. While cleaning the spare bedroom one afternoon, she found a box in the closet. Inside were bolts of fabric, thread in every color, patterns drawn on tissue-thin paper, and photographs. Maggie, in her younger days, maybe 40 or 50, standing beside a dress form draped in an elaborate wedding gown. Another photo showed her accepting some kind of award, a blue ribbon for first place at the county fair. That evening, Eva brought the box to the kitchen table while Maggie was making supper. "What's this?" she asked, though she already knew. Maggie froze when she saw it. For a moment, Eva thought the old woman might be angry, but instead her face softened into something bittersweet. "That's from before," she said quietly. "I used to sew. Made dresses for weddings, church events, special occasions. Was good at it too." "You were more than good." Eva pulled out the photograph with the award. "You were the best in the county." Maggie took the photo, studied it like she was looking at a stranger. "That was a long time ago." "Why'd you stop?" "After Annabelle." Maggie set the photo down. "I couldn't focus. Couldn't care about making pretty things when nothing felt pretty anymore. So I packed it all away." Eva looked at the bolts of fabric. Beautiful materials in deep blues and soft greens and rich burgundies. "Do you miss it?" Maggie didn't answer right away. She moved to the stove, stirred the pot there, buying time. "Sometimes," she admitted finally. "I'll see someone in town wearing something I made 10, 15 years ago. Still holding up, still beautiful. And I think I was good at making things that lasted." "You still are." Eva touched one of the fabric bolts. "This is all still here, waiting. I'm too old now. Hands aren't as steady. Eyes aren't as sharp. Or maybe you're just scared." Eva said it gently, without accusation, just fact. "Maybe you're scared that if you start living again, start doing the things you loved, you'll be happy. And being happy feels like forgetting Annabelle." Maggie turned from the stove. Her eyes were wet again. "Lord child, where does all this come from?" "From knowing what it's like to be stuck. To feel like moving forward means leaving someone behind." Eva stood moved to Maggie's side. "But Mama and Daddy wouldn't want me frozen. They'd want me living. And I bet Annabelle would want the same for you." The old woman pulled Eva into a hug. Sudden, tight. The first real embrace they'd shared. Eva felt Maggie's shoulders shake slightly. Felt tears dampen her hair. "Thank you," Maggie whispered. "Thank you for being brave when I can't be." "We'll be brave together," Eva said into the old woman's shoulder. "Deal." Deal. Sunday morning arrived bright and clear. Eva woke early dressed in the best clothes she owned. A simple dress Maggie had taken in to fit her better. Clean shoes, hair braided neat. When she emerged from her room, Maggie was already dressed. The mended dress fit her well dark blue with small white flowers. Her white hair was pinned up carefully. She looked nervous, terrified even, but determined. "You look beautiful," Eva said honestly. Maggie smoothed her dress with shaking hands. "I feel like I might throw up." "That's normal. I felt that way my first day at school after Mama and Daddy died. Like everyone would be staring at the girl whose parents drove off a bridge." Eva took Maggie's hand. "But then I realized they'd stare whether I was brave or not. So I might as well be brave." They drove to town in Maggie's old truck. The church sat on Main Street, white clapboard, with a tall steeple. Cars filled the parking lot. People moved toward the entrance in their Sunday best, greeting each other, laughing, living their lives. The way people do when tragedy hasn't touched them recently. Maggie's hands gripped the steering wheel. I can't do this. Yes, you can. We're just gonna walk in, sit in the back, and listen. That's all. If it's too much, we leave. But we have to try. Eva opened her door, came around to Maggie's side. The old woman sat frozen behind the wheel. Eva opened the driver's door, held out her hand. Together, she said. Maggie looked at that small hand, at the girl who'd somehow become her anchor. She took a deep breath, took Eva's hand, stepped out of the truck. They walked toward the church. People noticed. Of course they noticed. Margaret Ashford hadn't set foot in town for anything but absolute necessities in 15 years. And she'd never, not once, returned to this building. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Whispers began. But Hosea Brooks was standing at the door greeting congregants. When he saw them approaching, his face split into a genuine smile. Maggie, he said warmly. Eva, welcome. Welcome back. Reverend, Maggie managed. Her voice was thin, strained. Hosea took her hand in both of his. We've missed you so very much. We're just... Maggie couldn't finish. Eva spoke up. We're just here to worship, if that's all right. More than all right. Hosea's eyes shone. Come in. There's always room. They slipped into a back pew as the organ began playing. The service started. Hymns rose. Prayers were offered. Hosea gave a sermon about prodigal returns and open arms and grace that welcomes home the lost. Eva watched Maggie out of the corner of her eye. The old woman sat rigid at first, but gradually, as the service continued, as no one turned to stare or whisper loudly, as the familiar rhythms of worship washed over her, she relaxed. Just slightly. Just enough. When the final hymn ended, people turned to greet their neighbors. An older woman approached their pew. Someone perhaps Maggie's age. She had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Margaret Ashford, she said. It's been too long. Maggie stood uncertain. Mrs. Patterson. None of that. It's Helen, same as always. The woman pulled Maggie into a hug. I'm so glad to see you, honey. So very glad. Others came. Not everyone. Some kept their distance, perhaps uncertain how to bridge 15 years of absence. But enough. Enough to show that Maggie hadn't been forgotten. Hadn't been written off. A younger woman with 2 children in tow stopped by. Miss Maggie, I don't know if you remember me. I'm Sarah Thompson now. Was Sarah Jenkins. Maggie studied her face. Little Sarah who used to come to my shop with her mama. That's me. Not so little anymore. Sarah smiled. I still have the dress you made me for my 8th grade graduation. Wore it to my wedding. My daughter's gonna wear it to hers someday. You made something that'll last generations, Miss Maggie." Maggie's eyes went bright. "That means more than you know." When they finally made it back to the truck, Maggie sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. She stared straight ahead, processing. "You all right?" Eva asked. "They didn't hate me." "Why would they hate you?" "For staying away, for being too proud, or too ashamed to come back." Maggie's voice cracked. "I thought I'd burn those bridges." "Now some bridges are stronger than we think." Eva buckled her seatbelt. "And some people understand that grief makes us do things that don't make sense." Maggie started the truck. As they pulled out of the parking lot, she reached over and squeezed Eva's hand. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For being the bravest person I know." The days settled into a new rhythm after that. Church on Sundays, Maggie speaking to people again. Small steps back toward the world she'd abandoned. And Eva watched it all, feeling something like pride. She'd done this. Not entirely, of course. Maggie had done the hard work of facing her fears, but Eva had been the catalyst, the push, the voice saying it was okay to live again. 2 weeks after their first church visit, Sheriff Coleman's truck appeared in the drive. Eva was in the garden weeding the rows she'd cleared months ago, and Maggie had planted with fall vegetables. She saw the truck and felt her stomach clench. This was it. Claudette had made her move. Coleman climbed out, adjusted his belt, walked toward where Maggie had emerged from the house. He was a big man, 62, but still solid, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent a career dealing with other people's problems. "Maggie," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Dutch." Maggie's voice was cautious. She and the sheriff had known each other for decades. He'd been one of the men who'd helped search for Annabelle that terrible day. "What brings you out here?" "Official business, I'm afraid." Coleman's eyes found Eva in the garden. "About the girl." Eva stood, brushed dirt from her hands, walked over. "Is it my aunt?" Coleman nodded. "She came to see me. Filed a complaint. Says you're being kept here against your will. Says Miss Maggie won't let you leave." "That's not true," Eva said immediately. "I want to be here." "I believe you, but I had to come check. Had to see with my own eyes that you're being treated right." He looked between them. "May I come in? We should talk." They sat at the kitchen table. Maggie made coffee. Coleman pulled out a small notebook, flipped through pages. "Here's the situation," he said. "Claudette Morrison is your legal guardian. Has been since your parents passed. That gives her certain rights. Now she claims you ran away and that Miss Maggie is keeping you here. Technically, that could be considered harboring a minor." "I didn't run away," Eva protested. "She threw me out, told me to pack my things and leave." "Can you prove that?" Eva's heart sank. "No, it was just us. No witnesses." Coleman sighed. "That's what I figured. It's a he said, she said situation. And in those cases, the law usually sides with the legal guardian. Even if the guardian is terrible, Eva's voice rose. Even if she only wants me back to get money. Coleman's eyebrows raised. Money, what money? Maggie leaned forward. What money, Eva? Eva realized she'd said too much, but there was no taking it back now. My parents had life insurance. $80,000. Aunt Claudette is the guardian of the money until I'm 18. I heard her talking to someone on the phone. She's already spent most of it. Gambling debts, she needs me to sign something to get the rest. Coleman's expression hardened. How much has she spent? She said 60,000. There's 20 left. The sheriff wrote this down. That's embezzlement of a minor's funds. That changes things. He looked at Maggie. But it doesn't solve the immediate problem. Claudette can still claim custody, can still take Eva back while we investigate the financial situation. What if Maggie adopted me? Eva spoke before she could stop herself. Or became my guardian, could she do that? Ooh. Coleman looked at Maggie. You'd have to file with the court. Prove you can provide a stable home. It's a process. Takes time. And Claudette would fight it. I'll fight back, Maggie said quietly. Whatever it takes. It's not that simple. Coleman closed his notebook. You're 72 years old, living alone on a farm. The court might question whether you can handle raising a child. No offense meant. None taken. But I've been doing it for weeks now and Eva's thriving. I can see that. But a judge will want more. Character witnesses. Financial stability. Possibly a home study. He paused. And Maggie, I have to ask. You've been isolated a long time. The court might question your mental state. Your ability to provide not just physical care, but emotional stability. Maggie's jaw tightened. I'm not crazy Dutch. I know that. But you've been out of society for 15 years. That raises questions. I went to church last Sunday, Maggie said. Ask Hosea. Ask anyone who was there. I'm coming back. Getting right. Coleman nodded slowly. That helps. Honestly, it does. He stood. Here's what I'll do. I'll file a report saying I visited, that Eva appears healthy and happy, that there's no immediate concern for her welfare. That'll buy you some time. But Claudette's going to escalate. She'll get lawyers involved. And when she does, you need to be ready. How do we get ready? Eva asked. Get your own lawyer. File for guardianship formally. Document everything. And Eva, Coleman looked at her seriously. Be prepared to testify, to tell a judge exactly what happened and why you don't want to go back. After Coleman left, Eva and Maggie sat in silence. The weight of what lay ahead pressed down on them. I can't afford lawyers, Maggie said finally. Not expensive ones. The farm makes enough to get by, but that's all. Then we'll find another way. Eva's mind raced. The church. Didn't you say people used to come to you for dresses? Maybe they'd help. Eva, I can't ask people for money. Not money. Support. Witnesses. Letters telling the court you're a good person who can take care of me. Eva stood paced. And I'll talk to Reverend Brooks. He knows lawyers, doesn't he? Church lawyers, maybe one would help for free. Maggie watched the girl strategize. Watched this child who'd arrived broken and desperate transform into someone fierce and determined. You really want this? Maggie said softly. Want to stay here, with me? Eva stopped pacing. This is the first place since Mama and Daddy died where I've felt safe. Where I've felt like I matter. So yes, I want this. More than anything. Even knowing I'm old, that I might not be around as long as you need. Even knowing that. Because however long we have is better than going back to someone who doesn't want me. Maggie stood cross to Eva, pulled her into another embrace. Then we'll fight. Together. That evening after supper was cleared away, Eva approached Maggie with something she'd been thinking about. Can I ask you something kind of personal? Always. When Sheriff Coleman mentioned you're 72, are you healthy? I mean, is there anything wrong that I should know about? Maggie's expression flickered, just for an instant. So quick, Eva almost missed it. I'm old, Maggie said. Things hurt that didn't used to. I get tired easier. But nothing unusual for someone my age. It was the truth, mostly. What Maggie didn't say was what Dr. Harrison had told her 3 months ago during her annual checkup, that her heart was weakening, arrhythmia he'd called it, irregular heartbeat, could cause dizziness, fatigue, or it could cause sudden cardiac arrest with no warning. How long do I have? She'd asked. Could be years, could be months. There's no way to know. But you should get your affairs in order. Make sure your will is updated. That sort of thing. Maggie had driven home that day and done exactly that. Updated her will. Left the farm to the church since she had no family left. Prepared herself for an ending she'd halfway been courting for 15 years anyway. But that was before Eva. Now looking at this child who'd brought her back to life, Maggie felt the cruel weight of timing. She'd finally found a reason to keep living, and her body might not give her enough time to see it through. But she couldn't tell Eva. Not now. The girl had been through too much already. Adding the fear of losing another person would be too much weight for those young shoulders. So Maggie lied, or half-lied, and hated herself for it. I'm all right, she said. Just old. Nothing for you to worry about. Eva seemed satisfied. She hugged Maggie good night and went to her room. Alone in the kitchen, Maggie pressed her hand to her chest, felt the irregular flutter of her heartbeat, steady, then skip, then steady again, like a clock running down. Just give me time, she whispered to the empty room. To God or fate or whatever force controlled these things. Just enough time to see this through. The next morning, Eva woke with purpose. She dressed quickly, helped Maggie with breakfast, then made an announcement. I'm going to talk to Reverend Brooks today about getting help. Maggie looked up from her coffee. Eva, I told you I can't ask people for money. You're not asking. I am. Eva's chin lifted with determination. You've spent 15 years taking care of yourself, not asking for anything from anyone. But I'm 12. I'm allowed to ask for help. And if I ask, people can say yes or no without you having to feel bad about it. The logic was sound if unusual. Maggie opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just gave me a place where smart is allowed to show. Eva grabbed her jacket. Can I borrow the truck? You can't drive. Then will you drive me to town? Maggie sighed, but she was smiling. All right, let's go see Hosea. The church office was a small room attached to the sanctuary. Hosea looked up from his desk when they entered, his face brightening. Maggie, Eva, what a pleasant surprise. Reverend Brooks, Eva said, getting straight to business. We need help. Hosea listened as Eva explained the situation. The guardianship, Claudette's return, the legal battle ahead. When she finished, the old reverend sat back in his chair, fingers steepled. Well, he said slowly, this is quite a situation. Can you help? Eva asked. Do you know any lawyers who might take the case, or anyone who could tell a judge that Miss Maggie is good and kind and would be a great guardian? Hosea smiled gently. Eva, I've known Maggie for 40 years. I'll testify to her character anytime, anywhere. As for lawyers, he thought for a moment. There's a woman in our congregation, Patricia Simmons. She does family law. Pro bono work sometimes for people who can't afford it. Let me call her. He picked up the phone, dialed, had a brief conversation, hung up. She can see you tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock. Her office is on Maple Street above the pharmacy. Hosea jotted down an address. She says she can't make promises, but she'll consult for free and see what's possible. Eva felt hope surge in her chest. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. This will be hard. Claudette has the law on her side. Hosea's expression grew serious. But you have something stronger. What's that? The truth and people who believe in you. He looked at Maggie. The whole congregation's been buzzing since you came back. Folks have been asking about you, about the girl you've taken in. The story's getting around. And I think you'll find this community has your back. That Sunday when they returned to church, Eva understood what Hosea meant. People approached them with purpose. Mrs. Patterson brought a casserole. For you girls, she said firmly. You've got enough to worry about without cooking every night. Sarah Thompson, the young mother, pulled Maggie aside. I heard about the custody thing. I want to help. I'll write a letter. I'll testify. Whatever you need. You made my family's life beautiful with your work. Least I can do is return the favor. Others offered similar support. The church organist who remembered when Maggie had sewn her daughter's wedding dress. The hardware store owner who'd been buying eggs from Maggie's chickens for years. An elderly gentleman who'd gone to school with Maggie's late husband. You're not alone in this fight, he said gruffly. Don't you forget that. By the time they left church, Eva felt overwhelmed. Not by fear this time, by gratitude. By the stunning realization that asking for help didn't make you weak. It made you connected. On the drive home, Maggie was quiet, thoughtful. You did this, she said finally. Did what? Brought me back to these people. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be part of something bigger than just me and my grief. Maggie's voice was thick. You gave that back to me. They were always there. You just had to let them in. No, you let them in. I was content to stay hidden forever. But you... Maggie shook her head, wonder in her voice. You're the bravest person I know, Eva Morrison. You know that Eva didn't feel brave. She felt scared and uncertain.